There are tons of zombie games out there trying to give you that end of the world full of zombies vibe. There's a lot of them, but only a few actually managed to pull it off. One of those that really stood out and kept me and a bunch of other players hooked for hours was Dying Light. It's a first-person zombie game that mixed parkour and survival in a cool post-apocalyptic world. When its new sequel, Dying Light: The Beast, got announced, everyone went wild, hyped to see what this one would be like. In this video, we're diving into Dying Light: The Beast to see what its story's about and what new trouble our main guy, Kyle Crane, yep, the same guy from the first game, is getting himself into this time. If you've played the first game, you probably remember Kyle Crane, but here's a super quick recap. He used to be in the military before joining private security companies. One of them was the GRE, short for Global Relief Effort, a so-called humanitarian organization that was also working with the Ministry of Defense. Then this virus, kind of like rabies, but way worse, hit the city of Harran in Turkey. It turned living people into walking corpses. Kyle was sent in to recover a stolen file from a former GRE agent named Kadir Suleiman, aka Rice. Rice had been running things inside the quarantine zone for a while, like some warlord. They were hoarding a drug called antizin that kept the infection under control and stopped people from turning into zombies. When Kyle got there, he was attacked by infected and got bitten himself. A local resistance group saved him, and he teamed up with them against Rice. Eventually, Kyle found out GRE wasn't what it claimed to be. They weren't actually trying to find a cure. They were trying to make a bioweapon instead. Rice knew this too, and was planning to sell the info back to GRE in exchange for his freedom. Long story short, Kyle kills Rice and decides to give the data to a scientist trapped in Harran who was working on an actual cure. Things don't go smoothly though, and Kyle ends up leaving Harran for a rural area. Out there, he runs into a weird cult called the Children of the Sun, led by someone known only as the Mother. Kyle meets her and finds out she's a super advanced volatile, those terrifying night creatures from the first game. The Mother gives him a strange liquid to drink, which turns him into a volatile too. Struggling between humanity and his monster side, Kyle eventually gets captured by GRE again for experiments. Meanwhile, 98% of the world's population gets wiped out, and that's where our new story begins. 13 years later, Kyle's still being experimented on. He wakes up strapped to a bed with two scientists standing over him. Suddenly, two people burst into the room, kill the researchers, and try to free Kyle. But security shows up, things go sideways, and Kyle passes out. Next thing we know, he's in a large lab where scientists are talking about stem cells in a test subject called Subject Alpha. One guy tries to inject a serum into Kyle, but Kyle starts shaking and growls, "You're all going to die." The man coldly tells him they don't need him anymore. They found a better, more obedient test subject. Even though that injection could have easily killed Kyle, the guy still orders the scientist to go through with it and walks out. A few seconds later, the test subject suddenly wakes up, goes berserk, and tears the scientists apart before escaping. Kyle tries to use the chaos to break free too, but he blacks out again. After a while, he wakes up to a voice on the radio. It's a woman named Olivia. She promises to help him escape, no matter what it takes. The entire facility is crawling with zombies, and Olivia starts guiding Kyle toward an elevator. Along the way, his primal instincts kick in, and he absolutely shreds through the infected. He makes it into the elevator, then has to slide under some closing doors in a last-second move, and finally, after 13 long years, Kyle makes it out of that hellhole. Olivia tells him that he's not strong enough yet to face someone called Baron, and they'll need to get stronger first. She promises to help him take her revenge on Baron too, in exchange for helping him escape. According to Olivia, Kyle needs something called a GSP, a biocatalyst that boosts the body's physical condition. It's made in labs, but can also be extracted from the monsters that were created there. Turns out, Baron used to test his creatures out in the wild, and the area they're in now, called Castlewoods, was basically his personal testing ground. One of these experimental creatures suddenly shows up. Olivia calls its kind Chimera, and this one's name is Reaper. Kyle fights the Reaper and takes it down, but soon after, he collapses. Olivia collects the Reaper's blood and injects it into Kyle, though he passes out again. A few days later, Kyle finally wakes up. He's pissed that Olivia injected the GSP straight into him without asking, but she insists it saved his life, and it was necessary. She explains that each Chimera carries a different type of GSP, and by hunting them down and using their blood, Kyle can enhance his own abilities. Olivia also mentions that Baron's holed up in his family estate, a massive, fortress-like place. So Kyle starts trying to gather some allies for the upcoming fight. Meanwhile, Olivia tracks down the next Chimera's location. She also spots smoke coming from a place called Old Town, and sends Kyle there to check for possible survivors. While on the way, Kyle suddenly picks up a distress signal on the radio. They're attacking. The city hall is under siege. Kyle rushes over, and the first thing he sees are the bodies of Baron's men scattered everywhere. Before he can even take a breath, another chimera, this one called Defect, shows up to greet him in the worst way possible. They fight. Kyle wins, takes a blood sample, injects part of it into himself, and saves the rest for Olivia's research. After all that, Kyle gets in touch with the survivors at City Hall and convinces them he's not working with Baron, that they actually share the same enemy. They finally let him in and explain that the backup power system's down and needs to be restarted. Their leader had gone out to fix it earlier, but never came back. At the base of the clock tower, Kyle runs into one of the survivors, and honestly, the guy totally looks like Leon from Resident Evil. He tells Kyle the ladder's broken, so Kyle has to climb up the tower himself. At the top, he finally meets the sheriff, Florence, a tough, no-nonsense woman. After a pretty cold first encounter, Kyle goes back down, grabs an electrical cable, and climbs all the way up again to get the power running. Once the lights come back on, Florence properly introduces herself. The survivors start talking about a monster, one that Kyle apparently didn't kill. Florence says she saw it moving across the rooftops earlier when she was up in the tower. Another guy, Jacob, explains that Baron's men brought the creature to City Hall, and he asks Kyle to track it down before it kills anyone else. Kyle sets off, sneaking carefully past a few volatiles, when suddenly there's a huge explosion in the distance. He heads that way and finds a crashed truck full of bodies. Through the radio of one of the dead soldiers, he hears Baron's men calling for backup. They're trapped inside a church, fighting the same monster. Kyle enters the church, and it's an absolute bloodbath. It's obvious the creature's still there. It scuttles across the walls and ceiling, ringing the church bells, which wakes up a swarm of virals, those freshly turned zombies who still have bits of humanity left. Kyle fights his way through the chaos, climbs the tower, and keeps chasing the monster. Along the way, he hears more radio chatter. Baron's men are begging for help from the tunnels, saying they're being torn apart. Kyle heads there and ends up fighting a massive zombie. Then the creature jumps him again. But one of Baron's men, barely hanging on, detonates a bomb and blows up the whole tunnel. Kyle blacks out, and when he wakes up, the monster is still nearby, watching him, before it disappears again. Volatiles and virals chase him through the tunnels until he finally reaches daylight, which forces them to retreat. Kyle meets up with Olivia to get intel on new chimeras. She says she's analyzed his genetic makeup and found something strange. Like his DNA's been altered for a specific purpose, she gives him coordinates for another chimera, and when Kyle gets there, the scene's not pretty. He learns this one's called Nebulosa 478, designed for advanced combat capabilities. Kyle heads out to a small island in the middle of a lake, where he comes face to face with a chimera, codenamed Mist. It's fast, insanely loud, and hard as hell to hit. It even has this ability to summon other zombies to fight alongside it. Despite all that, Kyle manages to kill it, takes a blood sample, injects some into himself, and keeps the rest for Olivia's research. Later, he returns to City Hall and meets with Sheriff Florence again. She tells him they can't rely on the backup system anymore. If they want to keep things running, Kyle has to go to the power plant, which has been offline for about a month. Florence had already sent 2 teams to check it out, but neither of them ever came back. As Kyle gets close to the power plant, he hears a man's voice over the radio, warning him not to go any further. Of course, Kyle ignores him and goes in anyway. Inside, he meets a not-so-friendly guy named Largo. Largo tells him that to bring the power back, they'll need to activate the underwater turbines. So after a bit of swimming and dealing with Largo's constant insults, Kyle manages to get the turbines running again. But turns out, Largo was lying the whole time. He's actually working for Baron. Baron's men ambush Kyle and capture him, revealing that Baron has plans for him. He wants Kyle back. Kyle tries to warn them that he's not exactly human anymore, but they don't listen. They end up triggering the monster inside him, and Kyle goes full beast mode, ripping them all to pieces. After that bloody mess, Kyle finishes what he came for. The power plant's back online. While talking to Sheriff Florence, he tells her he couldn't find the 2 teams she'd sent earlier. More of Baron's men then show up at the plant, and Kyle promises to take care of them. Florence, though, is worried. She says this could spark an all-out war with Baron. Kyle doesn't back down. He wipes them out anyway, and the power stays on. He heads back to City Hall to meet with Florence and Jacob, explaining that whether they like it or not, Baron is now their enemy. Kyle suggests they start preparing to fight back. The group decides to hold off for now, gather allies, build defenses, and keep an eye on Baron's movements. Around this time, Olivia locates another chimera. This one's hiding in some kind of old historical site. Kyle asks Florence and Jacob about it, and they tell him their scouts saw strange gas containers in the area. They suspect Baron's running experiments there. Kyle clears the place of zombies and finds a strange device, the same type he's seen near other chimeras. He also spots 2 gas containers labeled E and F. Olivia tells him the markings belong to a chemical company whose main plant is down south. So Kyle heads there, cutting through hordes of zombies and clashing with more of Baron's soldiers. After a brutal fight, he finally breaks into the facility. Inside, he's pinned down by gunfire. Soldiers are panicking, screaming that something's loose. Once Kyle takes them out, he finds a surviving scientist hiding in the chaos. The guy tries to shoot him at first, but when he realizes he doesn't stand a chance, he starts begging for his life. He admits they were experimenting on a new type of virus meant to enhance chimeras. One of those creatures escaped, a special one, but the scientist says Kyle could still lure it out using the gas canisters. Kyle knocks the guy out, grabs one of the canisters, loads it onto a truck, and drives to a nearby junkyard, a place no one really goes to. After a few more fights, he sets up the canister inside a strange device and lets it release the gas. Like a moth drawn to a flame, the new chimera appears, this massive monster called Behemoth. It's huge, brutal, and relentless, but Kyle manages to bring it down. He takes a blood sample, injects part of it into himself, and keeps the rest for Olivia. When he brings her the sample, Olivia points out something shocking. The chimera's genetic code shows traces of Kyle Crane's own DNA. She thinks Baron's been trying to use Kyle's biology to create stronger chimeras. She's still not sure what's going on with the gas, though, and says she'll need more samples to find out. Kyle says he's done. He's tired of constantly injecting himself with GSP. It's time to face Baron once and for all. As he heads out, Sheriff Florence radios in, saying Baron's men have been spotted near an old salt mine. She thinks something big is going down and asks Kyle to meet her there. When they arrive, Florence tells him she's got eyes on them and will cover him from a distance. From here, you can either go full stealth or charge right in. Either way, there's no sign of Baron. Instead, Kyle finds a container. Something inside is pounding on it from within. Kyle radios Florence, but she suddenly turns cold. She admits she's been lying, says she has to protect her people. Before Kyle can react, Baron's soldiers surround him. He's been set up. Baron finally shows himself. He starts giving this cliché speech about building the future and how Kyle no longer has a place in it. Kyle fights back and cracks open the container, and something monstrous bursts out. After an intense fight, the creature escapes. Baron throws a grenade, blasting a wall open and causing the mine to collapse. Kyle barely manages to climb out alive. Outside, Kyle grabs his radio and growls a message to Florence, promising that after what she's done, he's coming for her. On the way back, Kyle talks with Olivia. He admits she was right. He's not ready to take on Baron yet. When he returns to City Hall, he tells Jacob about Florence's betrayal and that she's vanished. Kyle tells him his mission to take down Baron still stands, but he's got no solid leads. Jacob mentions a few people Florence had kicked out, refugees who escaped Baron's labs. They might know something. Turns out, those people found a rare kind of fungus that slows the infection's progress. Jacob promises to reach out to them. On his way to meet them, Kyle starts hearing voices in his head, like telepathic whispers. It triggers his PTSD. It feels just like the time his infected mother spoke to him. The voice tells him to meet at Pembroke Farm, then warns it's not safe and asks him to come to a house in the swamps instead. Kyle heads there and, after fighting off some of Baron's men, finally meets the person behind the voice, a man named Sven. He's one of the people Jacob mentioned. Sven explains that since they're both infected, their minds can connect. That's how they were able to communicate telepathically. Sven says he and his team have been tracking Baron for years, but before he can share more, he tells Kyle that 2 of his teammates went missing and asked for help finding them. Kyle agrees and follows the trail to an old farmhouse. Up in the attic, he finds a map showing Baron's outposts and realizes Sven's people were likely taken to one of them. Kyle heads there, takes out Baron's guards, but finds no trace of the missing team. However, he picks up a radio from one of the soldiers and hears a voice saying they're moving them to the pig farm, after that to the castle. When Kyle gets to the pig farm, he spots Baron's men moving crates. Looks like they're getting ready to transport them back to their base. He also sees Sven's teammates, tied up and being prepared for transfer. Of course, things go south fast. One of the soldiers spots him, and a firefight breaks out inside the barn. Kyle radios Sven, letting him know his people have been captured. After another wave of fights with Baron's troops, Kyle finally tracks the captives down near a river and frees them. He brings them back to the group's hideout, where everyone welcomes him like a hero. Inside the cave that serves as their base, Kyle realizes there are a lot more survivors here, and thankfully, Baron doesn't seem to know about this place. But things get tense fast. Sven gets scolded by their leader, Lydia, who's furious about the rescue. She says saving those 2 this way only puts everyone else at risk. Baron will come looking for them now. Lydia thanks Kyle for helping, but firmly asks him to leave. Sven tries to convince her to let him stay, but that only makes her angrier. She knows Baron won't stop until he's wiped them all out. Still, after a heated argument, Kyle follows Sven deeper into the cave, where he introduces him to Selby, the group's radio tech. Selby understands Sven's worries. Baron's been tightening his communications network lately, and they need to keep up. She and Sven ask Kyle to install a signal booster on a nearby tower. Baron uses those same towers to amplify his radio traffic, so this would let Kyle tap directly into his transmissions. Surprisingly, Lydia agrees this time. Kyle climbs the tower and sets up the booster, but the signal's too weak. He'll need one of Baron's encrypted radios to fully unlock it. After fighting his way through some of Baron's patrols, Kyle gets a working radio and brings it back to Selby. Still not enough, so he goes out again, installing more amplifiers across the city. Finally, after setting up the last transmitter on Belfry Tower, Selby radios in. The signal's clear, we've got everything. But right then, they intercept a chilling message. Baron's planning to attack City Hall, to blow the entire place sky high. Kyle rushes to warn Jacob, but Jacob says the survivors can't evacuate. Baron's troops have locked down all the exits. Kyle heads underground beneath City Hall, where he finds Baron's men planting explosives. After a brutal fight, he manages to disarm the bombs just in time, saving the building and everyone inside. Kyle contacts Olivia, telling her that the Exile group managed to tap into Baron's comms. She says she's got new data on the Chimeras and sends Kyle to a nearby park. When he gets there, Olivia explains she's tracked a Chimera. It's not far. Kyle moves in and finds another containment unit and lure device, just like before. He sets the trap, and soon enough, the new Chimera, called Toxin, shows up. It's way more dangerous than the last one, spewing toxic clouds and calling hordes of infected to its aid. But Kyle manages to take it down and, as usual, collects a sample. Olivia takes the specimen for analysis. While she's working, Sven reaches out to Kyle telepathically again. He says they intercepted more chatter. Baron's researchers had been running experiments in an old school until the place got overrun by raiders. Lydia joins the call, asking Kyle to check it out and see what's really going on there. Outside the school, we meet up with Ray and get the intel we need. Then we head inside and find tons of zombies. Luckily, most of them are asleep and not moving. Kyle goes into a room and meets one of the researchers, Camillo Marino. He explains he hid here after the raiders attacked. Kyle radios Ray and tells him to wait in the basement. When Ray sees Camillo, he takes him back toward their cave hideout, and Camillo gives Kyle the archive key, a vault of important research files. As Kyle starts grabbing files, Baron's men attack. Kyle barely escapes the school and races back to the cave. But when Kyle hands the files to Lydia, she tells him Ray and Camillo never made it to the cave. Kyle tries to contact Ray, but gets no answer. He follows the trail and finds the truck where Ray is dead inside. Tracking Camillo's route, he reaches a farmhouse where Camillo explains what happened. A giant chimera heaved a lamppost at the truck and crushed Ray. Sven and Lydia show up, and it turns out Lydia and Camillo already know each other. Camillo admits he always wondered whether Lydia had survived. Lydia thanks Kyle and confesses that if she wants to keep people alive, she has to learn to trust the right allies. She reveals that they used to be Baron's lab subjects, and Camillo was one of the rare researchers who actually treated them like humans. He tried to make their injections less brutal, so they wouldn't turn into mindless monsters. Lydia adds that with Camillo's help, they're slowly getting ready to take the fight to Baron. We contact Olivia next. She recognizes Dr. Camillo Marino. He was a senior researcher under Baron, and tells Kyle she recovered a data drive from the school lab. She asks him to bring it to an old cement factory, since she's also tracked another Chimera signal there. We meet Olivia, hand over the drive, and then head to hunt the Chimera. This Chimera behaves like the ones before, darting around, hard to pin down, preferring to hide and use zombies as its defense. A few well-placed hits and some searching eventually do the trick, and Kyle kills it and collects a sample as usual. When we give the sample to Olivia, she says she examined the drive and discovered the army had been using a gas on the infected. Kyle remembers the cult Children of the Sun using something similar, a calming compound. Olivia explains there are different gases. The red gas, unlike the blue one, makes zombies far more violent and powerful. She even finds the name of the researcher who worked on the gas, none other than Olivia's own father, who was involved in the Heron outbreak. Olivia says he's still working for Baron now, but against his will, to save him, they'll have to take Baron down. After that, Kyle heads back to the cave to talk with Camillo and Lydia. Lydia says that with a stronger, better injection, they could amplify their telepathic ability, even to the point of mind control. Camillo expands on that, saying they could potentially control zombie minds and turn them against Baron. But to make that work, Kyle first needs some special materials from a really dangerous spot. Yep, the main volatile nest. Kyle isn't thrilled about it, but he reluctantly agrees to collect 3 volatile plasma samples. He enters the nest carefully. Inside, he finds one of Baron's dead researchers and another gas dispersal device. There's also a chimera here, actually a volatile named Rice. It can hide in ambush, so Kyle has to use a UV flashlight to fight it. Just as expected, he defeats it, collects more samples, and ventures deeper into the nest. Luckily, there aren't too many volatiles, but he still has to stay on his toes. Even one noticing him could spell disaster. Kyle sneaks past them and manages to collect all 3 plasma samples. Of course, the game isn't done making life hard. The volatiles eventually spot him and swarm. Kyle has to fight his way out and escape the nest. Once he's back at the cave, he hands the samples over. Olivia informs him that another chimera has been spotted at the sewage treatment plant. Following the usual routine, Kyle tracks it down. This massive chimera draws power from the toxic reservoir nearby. It's bigger and stronger than the others, but Kyle defeats it and collects the final GSP sample. Finally, it's time for the showdown with Baron. Lydia connects with Kyle telepathically, letting him know the plasma tests were successful. She asks him to meet near a small incinerator by the hospital. When they regroup, Kyle sneaks into the hospital and grabs a critical drug from a storage room. Thankfully, Lydia can control the nearby zombies for now, keeping him safe until he's ready to move. He grabs the drug, but an alarm sounds and Lydia loses control of the zombies. Kyle makes a fast escape to the safe zone. Camillo warns him that they had to leave the house because of the zombies, and Lydia is now extremely weak. But Kyle has no time to rest. The city hall is under attack again. On the way, he gets a message from the sheriff, who isn't happy and explains that they need to cooperate to save the citizens. When Kyle arrives, Baron's men have spread red gas all over City Hall. Kyle takes care of them, but the threat isn't over. Mortar teams on rooftops are tossing grenades filled with the gas. Kyle disables them and destroys the grenades. Then a chimera appears. Kyle defeats it, but 2 more show up. Kyle fights them while Lydia uses her mind control powers to manipulate one chimera to attack the other. It works. One dies and the other flees. Finally, the sheriff appears. Kyle angrily demands answers, and she explains that Baron had imprisoned her and forced her to choose between Kyle or the citizens. During that time, she had been hiding out in the forest, trying to stay alive. When Lydia arrives, things get tense fast. Not exactly a friendly reunion. After all, the sheriff was the one who exiled Lydia and her people from City Hall in the first place, so it makes sense there's bad blood between them. The sheriff apologizes, and everyone agrees to leave the past behind and team up, because now they all share one enemy. Kyle says Baron has sent patrols to track down the monster that escaped earlier, and that they can use this to their advantage. Lydia has an idea to lure the creature toward them, but they'll need some red gas for it to work. Kyle heads back to the factory from the start of the game, grabs 2 gas canisters, throws them into a truck, and drives through the area while the gas spreads all around. The plan works. The monster takes the bait and charges straight into the cave. Kyle weakens it just enough so Lydia can try to take control of its mind, but it doesn't work. He's forced to knock it out instead and inject it with some of its own blood, bringing back traces of its human side. Lydia manages to fully control it and leads it back to their main hideout.
Who are you? Where am I?
My name is Lydia. You've been lost inside yourself for a very long time, but I managed to find you and bring you back. Can you tell us who you are? How you got here?
I'm Aiden. My friend Spike and I were trying to rescue someone from the Baron, but it all went to shit. That's the last thing I remember. Until I woke up here.
Who were you trying to rescue?
Him. You're Kyle Crane, right? Spike's friend?
You and Spike tried to rescue me?
We did. Yeah, where is he? Did you find him when you found me?
No.
Then the Baron must still have him. We have to go back for him.
You're in no condition to go anywhere.
I'm fine. We need to find Spike. Get him out of there. Who knows what they're doing to him? He's your friend too.
He is, and we'll go get him. But Lydia's right. You're in no condition to go after anyone.
We can't just let him rot in there.
We're not. And we won't. But going off half-cocked will just get Spike killed. We need a plan. But first, I got some questions for you. How do you know Spike?
We were both pilgrims. The messengers. Connecting different towns and settlements. Spike took me in. And taught me a lot. The whole reason he became a pilgrim was to find you.
I've seen a lot of crazy shit, but nothing like you. What are you?
I don't know. I was experimented on as a child. Infected with the virus. They messed with my DNA. I'd have these blackouts that turned me into something really dangerous. And that Baron got a hold of me. And I don't know what he did to me, but I barely remember anything. I kept trying to find my way out, but I was so lost. If not for you people, I don't think I ever would have found my way back.
What can you tell me about his operation?
The Baron lives in a massive fortress with snipers up top to guard the perimeter.
She's not wrong. It won't be easy.
Sheriff, it's the Baron. He's on the radio.
Speak of the devil.
She tells him Aiden has gone off on his own to surrender himself to Baron, trying to save Spike. Then Baron himself comes through on the radio. He says he wants Kyle dead, and if Kyle isn't at his base by noon, both Spike and Olivia will die. The sheriff tells the group she still has the blueprints of Baron's fortress, including a series of old underground tunnels from when a place used to be a medieval castle. Kyle sneaks in through the tunnels, taking out snipers one by one before opening the main gate so the others can rush in. A full-blown gunfight breaks out. Sven is shot and dies. Lydia, furious, uses her powers to send a horde of virals charging at Baron's soldiers. Kyle pushes forward and finally spots Baron stepping into an elevator. He tears through the remaining guards and follows him down. He ends up in a massive underground railway tunnel, grabs a vehicle, and speeds through until he reaches Baron's main facility, a huge complex filled with chimera containment cells. Baron starts releasing them one by one to kill Kyle, and the fight gets absolutely chaotic. At one point, you're fighting 3 chimeras at once. Lydia does her best to help, using her mind control to make them attack each other and turn on Baron's men. Kyle eventually makes it inside the main lab and realizes this is the same facility where he was imprisoned at the very start of the game. After cutting through a wave of soldiers, he finally finds Aiden, but things go south fast. After Olivia's sudden betrayal, Kyle, Aiden, Spike, Lydia, and the others wake up tied to chairs. Lydia explains they were knocked out by gas and captured by Baron's men. Baron and Olivia walk in. He smugly says he's gathered everyone to celebrate his final evolution. He calls Kyle the first captured volatile hybrid and reveals the truth. He let Kyle escape on purpose, just to watch his instincts grow stronger. And all those GSP injections, they weren't what Kyle thought. The whole time, Baron was experimenting on him, with Olivia secretly helping. Baron then takes a knife and brutally kills Spike and Camillo right in front of everyone, forcing Kyle to watch. When he turns to kill Lydia, Olivia steps in, begging him to stop. Baron hands her a gun, ordering her to shoot Kyle. She aims at him, but at the last second, turns the gun on Baron. When she pulls the trigger, nothing happens, the gun's empty. Baron laughs, but Olivia lunges and drives a knife straight into his eye. While Baron reels in pain, he injects himself with a serum. Olivia quickly frees everyone and tells Kyle she's been on his side the whole time. She just had to hide it. Kyle and Aiden chase Baron to the rooftop. They spot a helicopter and shoot at it to stop his escape. Chaos breaks out. Waves of zombies, Baron's soldiers, and finally Baron himself. Lydia tries to help by controlling nearby zombies, but she's weakening fast. Aiden runs to help her, leaving Kyle alone for the final fight. During the battle, Baron boasts that he's created a strain capable of controlling both the virus and humanity itself. He injects it into himself and mutates into a hybrid volatile chimera monstrosity. Kyle gives it everything he's got. In an epic showdown, he finally impales Baron through the chest and throws him off the facility platform, killing him for good. A helicopter soon arrives. It's the GRE. One of their old operators contacts Kyle and admits that Baron was one of their rogue field agents who went off the rails. By defeating him, Kyle has actually done them a favor. The operator tells him to focus on what's left of the world, on rebuilding, not revenge. Kyle just smiles and promises that he, Lydia, and Aiden will soon come for GRE 2. And that's it, the full story of Dying Light the Beast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next story recap or gameplay.